Good morning, everyone. My name is Jill DeMasi, and today I'm going to be your host for MentorMeet Stories. MentorMeet Stories is a new podcast where we sit down with coaches and mentors from across the MentorMeet platform to explore stories, honest challenges, and practical ideas that help people grow at work and in life. Our subject for today is getting out of our own way. Our guest, Arnett, is someone who's spent over 30 years helping people make sense of big, messy problems and doing something useful to do something useful with them. Alan works with senior leaders who are facing tough decisions, big challenges, or moments where the usual answers don't seem to work anymore. He doesn't come in with a script or a blueprint. Instead, he offers something rarer, a calm, thoughtful space to explore what's really going on and what might need to shift. Before coaching, Alan led transformation projects in huge organizations like BP, PwC, and AXA XL. So, before he sits down with a client, it's not theory. He's been there. He knows the pressure of high-stake roles, the politics, the pace, and the power of taking a step back to find your own way through. This conversation is for anyone who's ever felt stuck in complexity, unsure how to move forward, or simply in need of a sounding board that gets it. So, Alan, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jill, and hi, everybody.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So let's jump in with the first question, which is, we framed this session as getting out of our way, out of our own way, not your own way. Why the collective framing?
I think because every time we're trying to do anything ourselves, we're always interacting with other human beings. Excuse me, unless we shut ourselves away in a cave somewhere. Although we like to think that we're in complete control of what we do, there's a lot of conditioning happens from us and from other people. And particularly if you're a leader in any kind of organization, anything that you want to get done has to get done with and through other people. It's simply not possible just to issue a slide deck and kind of make things happen. I know people wish it was, but there's also a thing. It's a bit subtle, but and we might kind of come back to it later in the conversation. But I think the way we use language can make a big difference in ways we don't quite pay attention to day to day. So if a leader, for example, was to go to someone in their team and say, "I need you to get out of your own way," that's a very kind of direct instruction. And most of us respond really badly to those kinds of direct instructions, including the leaders that are giving them. On the other hand, if you can get into a conversation where you're trying to pull people into the discussion of whatever's trying to be fixed, and we can talk about how might we all be getting in the way of this thing that we say we are trying to achieve. It's just a kind of tiny example of how small shifts in the language can actually make a big difference to what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when we were prepping for this interview, you talked about letting go. And can you expand on that from the viewpoint of not just your client that you're working with, but also yourself as a coach?
Oh, crikey. Yeah. We get sorry, let me just kind of focus on that because it's a big question.
Yes.
We get taught, and I probably said this to you before, I don't remember, but I say this a lot. We get taught when we're younger that there are right answers to everything. So, our parents, our teachers at university, even when we get into work, there's this idea of there being a right answer and a wrong answer. And if we're really good, quotes, we kind of pass our exams, we get rewarded, we get a job, we do our job well, we get rewarded, we get promoted. All of those things happen. There's this reinforcement loop going on the whole time to the idea that there are right answers and wrong answers, and if we just do the right answer, that's okay. The trouble is, by the time you get to be a leader of any size in almost any size of any organization, the further up you go, the more complicated the organization gets, the more complex the decisions are that you're involved in. And if most leaders, when they're honest, work out that as they get higher up in the organization, they actually have less and less direct control.
Mm.
And so letting go is sometimes letting go of very specific skills or patterns or tools or, whatever that kind of got them to the position they're in now. But there's also a degree to which it's about the idea of letting go of the idea of there always being right answers and being more curious and asking more questions and going, in this particular situation, we've done things like this before, but this group of people has never done this thing before. And if you aren't aware of your biases and habits, they can get in the way of the thing you're trying to solve, because you're kind of taking yourself off down some what can be some blind alleys.
Yeah. And as a coach yourself, when you let go of the process or the
Yeah.
outcome, then you're helping the client to really see themselves rather than you being directive in trying to get them somewhere yourself as a coach.
Yeah, and I have to consciously let go of all kinds of things. There's some coaching that I do through another platform where everyone comes to a coaching session having given me some notes and instructions on what they want to talk about, what the problem is, what they think the solution is, and all of those things. Now, on the one hand, that should be useful information, right?
Mm.
But on the other hand, there's always a gap between when they write the notes and when they show up. So the first thing I have to do is kind of read that, but the phrase, rather than letting go completely, just to be clear for the people watching this, I'm not talking about discarding everything. I'm just talking about the difference between, and I must have done this for you on screen when we spoke last time as well. The difference between holding a pen like this, right, holding an idea or a plan or a strategy like that, and holding it like that.
Mm.
Because if you're holding it like that, it's really hard
Mm.
to change it, to listen to other people, to explore different options.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're holding it more lightly, as someone once said to me, then
Yes.
you've got more opportunity to flex. And coaching is all about showing up, trying to do your best. We all have biases, we all have habits. I've spent
Mhm.
years trying to get rid of a whole load of mine and kind
Yeah.
of accepting that they still come back. And I have to notice they're there and let it go again. So letting go in itself becomes a skill.
Mm.
But it's being able to be aware of the things as they pop up,
Yes.
push them to one side, and then get curious again about what else might be possible.
Yes. And also, it draws a line between what is coaching and what is consultancy or mentoring. Because as a coach, you really, it's not about you, it's not about what you think, it's about what's right for the client, and you don't know, what they need.
And that's a really interesting point, because if anyone goes to look at my LinkedIn profile or my MentorMeet profile, my profile very deliberately says thinking partner and coach. And I
Hmm.
say that because I am a trained coach. I'm a really good coach. I'm a really experienced coach. And when I turn up to a conversation, as I said before, I don't know whether the situation that the person is trying to resolve is best helped purely by coaching, or
Yes.
whether it's going to be a mix of coaching, sounding board, mentor, experience, shortcuts. If I've got a shortcut for someone, I'm not going to sit there and coach them for 12 hours until they work it out themselves.
Yeah.
I'm going to offer it to them and let them try it. So I think there's one of the challenges for the coaching profession in general is that this thing of letting go and kind of holding on to things too tightly. Some people
Hmm.
hold coaching too tightly.
Hmm.
Some people hold whatever we learn and get good at that helps us grow and develop and we get rewarded for, we
Hmm.
hold on to it quite tightly. And we kind of we end up thinking that's who we are,
Yes.
but that isn't who we are. There are always other options, but
Hmm.
it's about playing with those ideas and working out so, a conversation with me will include bits of everything. It will include bits of coaching, bits of mentoring, bits of advice, whatever's needed, but
Hmm.
it's based, it always starts with questions and coaching to help the person I'm working with and me get clear on exactly what it is they're trying to solve for and where they're trying to get to,
Yeah.
so we can then work out the best tools or techniques to help.
Yeah. And can you give us a sense of the kind of challenges that leaders bring to you? Um,
It can be yeah. Sorry, I only laughed because I've been doing this.
That's a
I've been
big
doing this.
question, right?
Yeah, I've been doing this for so long. It's like the whole range. So put one end the kind of, I don't want to say they're small things. They're kind of targeted things. Things like I've got someone in my team who's really annoying, or my boss is really annoying, or I've been put into a new situation and I'm a bit out of my depth and I'm not quite sure what to do with it. So that's
Mhm.
kind of one. Um, uh, Over the past few years, I've been working with an organization that has probably over the past 5 years, it's um, downsized 3 times, restructured twice, completely changed its go-to-market strategy, put in place new technology that it doesn't quite understand, and done a whole bunch of other things where the kind of, as so often in organizations, the big structural stuff has been moved. So there's a strategy, a structure, and all of those things.
Mhm.
And everyone, and I've coached quite a few people there, are left trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And that's a really big deal because part of making sense of it is sense making is an active process.
Yes.
What I mean by that is when you encounter something that's really messy and complicated, you can't go to a library somewhere or to a database or even to AI these days and say, tell me what to do. I know lots of people do that, and
Yeah.
they get answers back from AI that seem really credible, but actually making sense of how this is going to work. If everyone's just been moved around and they've all got different views of what's going on, but they
Mhm.
need to work together, they're essentially recontracting for how they operate as a team. And that's a really messy, fuzzy thing that we
Yeah.
don't get to do very often.
Mhm.
But there are some patterns and structures to that people can learn to get much better at it much faster.
Mm. And this would be a perfect example to bring in one of your key takeaways, which is not relying on experience, but questioning assumptions. Perhaps you can tell us about the story at Ford with the manual filing system, which I think might be a good story to bring in here to demonstrate
Yeah.
what you're
So
talking about.
so people sometimes ask me, how did I get here? Well, I started life not knowing what I wanted to do at school. Left school at 17 because I got frustrated with A levels, and Ford's was the biggest employer in the area where I lived. And a friend of the family works there and said, well, you could train to be an engineer. And I kind of went, okay, I don't quite understand what that means, but I get paid while I'm learning. And I'm interested in cars, that's fine. And anyway, I worked in a team in a department that's job was all about paperwork. It was certification testing. So we had to make sure that the vehicles met all the regulations on the road. So and I'm old enough that we didn't have computers in the office. When I first arrived, we had a guy who typed all our documents. And when I say typed them all, there were probably like 600 different documents in filing cabinets around this office. They were our certificates. They were kind of the lifeblood of what we did. And then someone went out and bought this thing called a computer, and it was big, and it was big, and it came in a big box in an air-conditioned room, and there were 3 terminals, and none of us quite knew what it was about. And the way we accessed the documents in the filing cabinets in the old days was there was this tiny box on the top with a lot of cards in, and we would say, okay, I need to find this document for this vehicle, and it would take us 3 seconds. We were so good at doing it. We'd bang, pull the card out. Right, it's in cabinet number 5, drawer number 6, and you just go and get your document. When we got the computer, some bright spark thought that it would be a really good idea because if we put it on the computer, it must be better, right? That kind of thinking was around even then. And so what they did was built this tiny spreadsheet really on this thing so that you could do the same job of saying, if I'm going to look for this document, where can I find it? Now, the manual system took as long as it took us to walk up to the cabinets at one end of the
Yeah.
office, click the cards, and find the thing. It was 10 or 15 seconds at most. There were about 12 of us in the room. We only had 3 terminals. So to actually do it the other way, you first of all had to wait for a terminal. Then you had to log on because we were all supposed to do it under our own login not not under anyone else's. And then you had to do the search in the spreadsheet, and because it was so old and slow, it would take like 15 or 20 seconds to come back with exactly the same information that was on the Cardex. Now, this is not a story about Cardexes and computers. It's a story about how human beings make sense of things and make choices about what's a useful and smart thing to do with or without technology.
Mm.
And almost always the first react back to this thing about experience and habits. One of the things that we do almost almost literally without thinking about it is that we kind of go back to what we already do, and then we layer this technology on the top. And for anyone who's kind of involved in, and I've seen this a lot over the years, and for anyone that's involved in AI at the moment, you can see exactly the same thing happening as people are taking vague ideas about what AI may or may not be capable about and what it may or may not be useful for,
Mm-hmm.
and already automating things, changing things, saying they're going to replace complete human beings with this stuff. To which my response is normally, "Okay, great, show me."
Mm-hmm.
Because normally, the minute you start digging down into the not the overall principle, but the specific, show me how you're going to make this work in this situation for these particular people, most of those suggestions start to fall apart, and you find the limitations of the technology,
Right.
and then you start to have interesting questions,
Yeah.
conversations.
Yes.
But but the thing about experience and patterns is not limited to technology, right? It's
No, of
it's
course.
it's a, it's a generic thing we do. I've seen loads of leaders join organizations, bringing with them really good experience from other places that they've been, and then turn up in the new organization. And instead of trying to use their experience to lead that organization well, they try and turn their new organization into their old one. Because that's
Yes, I've also seen that. Yeah.
to,
Yes.
to the extent of bringing half their team with them
Yes.
and kind of hoping that, well, it worked last time, so it must work this time, right?
Yes. Exactly. And this will be a lot easier if I just bring everybody on board with me.
Yeah.
So, questioning assumptions and getting curious, what does that actually look like in practice for a leader?
At a really kind of basic level, it means being able to, when you're in those really annoying meetings and you're getting frustrated with people. So I always say that a good way to think about this is anytime you're frustrated, before you open your mouth, first of all, learn some skills to just focus, breathing skills, centering skills, those kinds of things. Put your assumptions and all that noise going on in your head to, and then just think about. I quite often, I always talk about questions, because if you ask a question in a situation, there's a chance you might learn something new. There's a chance you might learn something that you didn't know and surprises you. And being able to ask questions is a useful way of challenging people rather than just screaming at them, right? So I will almost revert in the beginning to three basic questions. What's the problem we're trying to solve here? What's the outcome we're trying to get to? And what options do we have to get from A to B? And most of the time, when we get angry, frustrated, scared, all of those things going on inside us, it's because one of those three things, or sometimes all three, aren't clear to us, or
Yeah.
else we've made assumptions about what they are, and we're kind of beginning to stress or panic based on our assumptions, not based on facts.
Yeah.
So the kind of basic advice always is start simple. There's a lot of this stuff, it can get really complicated, but I'm a big fan of saying, no, 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 this is all about how you show up in the conversations you have already, and notice when you're jumping to conclusions and reacting, and instead of acting on those assumptions,
Hmm.
ask some questions. And I kind of don't care which one of those you ask first. Just
Hmm.
ask one of them and see what happens, and then ask another one, and then gradually the conversation shifts. And that's a big learning for leaders. The fact that this thing about experience versus curiosity, there are
Hmm.
lots of people who, as I said before, they get to the top of organization, they think they're supposed to be in charge, and kind of
Yeah.
technically they are, right? But they
Mm.
are in charge, but they aren't in control. And that's quite scary. And there's a lot to try and make sense of. And when we get scared, what we do is react fast and just jump to conclusions and issue orders, which is what lots of people are used to from leaders. But
Mhm.
it's actually much more powerful for a leader to go, hold on a minute. I'm not sure we know what we're doing here. Back
Yes.
to that we word again. Can I,
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask some questions. What are the number of times I've been in meetings when I first started to do this, and
Hmm.
I just kind of put my hand up and said, sorry, it might just be me, but can I just check what problem we're trying to solve for here?
Yes.
Because we started off talking about this, then we talked about that, and then we talked about this.
Yeah.
And just by asking the question, the first person says, well, we're trying to fix this problem. And
Right.
there's someone else says, no, we're not. I thought we were trying to fix this one. And then you kind of surface the confusion in the room, and you can try and refocus just by the
Exactly.
power just by the power of a well-placed question.
And what you're doing in doing that is you're making it into a collaborative experience rather than I'm the boss and I'm here to tell you what's needed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I kind of talk about this in different ways, the rules of the game and everything else. But back to this thing again of as we grow up, we are taught that there are rules of the game. And the rules of the game always come from someone more senior than us, whether
Mm.
it's our teacher, our parent, our lecturers, our boss, or whatever. We kind of just assume. This morning, I was on LinkedIn talking about something or other, as I quite often am. And a guy said, oh, yeah, yeah, well, this thing is a problem. And all we need to do is go to the top of the organization, change the way they think, and everything will be fine. Which is a kind, and I had to kind of go, oh, okay, interesting. Quite a few people talk about that, including
Mm.
lots of consultants and coaches, by the way. But it's kind of if we can just work with the top team, then everything else gets fixed. And
Mm.
it's kind of there's a bit of truth in there, but I said it's way more complicated than that. Particularly in a big organization, how we think and behave comes much more from the group of people around us rather than some boss who could be 3,000 miles away these days in a different country.
Yeah.
And you can't, and anyway, you can't just tell people to do things. Back to the point you made before, it's like we don't like it when people tell us what to do most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, Therefore, why is it leaders still insist on trying to, roll out recipes with town halls and slide decks when even when I get to talk to them and they say, but I don't understand. We put the strategy together and we ran the town hall and they aren't doing it.
Mm.
I said, okay, have you used this approach before? Yes. Have they ever just done it? Well, no. Okay, so why are we still doing it then? Well, I don't know what else to do. Good. Okay. Good insight. Let's talk about what else
Right.
to do.
So from there, what would it look like in real life, in a real workplace conversation, to implement the concept of pace and lead? Can you break that down a little bit for us?
Okay, so pace and lead is a kind of psychological term of you can only you can't wish someone was somewhere else, right? A lot of the time, leaders say things to people like, "Oh, I've got this person in my team who's underperforming. They're operating like this at the moment. I need to be, I need them to be operating like that." So back to the tell thing again. If I just tell them how to operate, they should do it.
Mm.
And that's not how human beings work. Pace and lead is you kind of have to start where they are. Now, the
Mm.
reason that you have to start with where they are is because their current frames and filters and stories about how to operate in the world, all the things that have got them to be successful,
Mhm.
they're holding quite tightly.
Exactly what you were
And
saying
therefore,
then.
and
Mm.
therefore the pacing has to be that you've got to get them to do that. Now
Yeah.
you can't tell them to do that. You would like to be able to tell them, but there's another way that this gets talked about. So the difference between a change, something that you want someone to do, and transition, which is the time it takes them to make sense of it. And a transition, according to a guy called William Bridges, includes three things. It includes letting go of how you've done things up until now.
Mhm.
And when people take away our usual ways of doing things, our comfort blanket, our security blanket, if you like, if someone tries to take that away, the first thing we do is resist. The
Hold
second thing,
tighter, right?
yeah, yeah, it's kind of you're not taking this away from me
Mm.
until I know there's something to replace it. So
Mm.
we are willing to let go if we can see the alternative.
Mm.
Now, that kind of works sometimes if there's a concrete, tangible alternative that is attractive to them. So not attractive to you, but attractive to them. So you, everyone needs some kind of motivation and
Yeah.
aspiration to go for. But when you start talking to them, you don't know what they aspire to.
Yeah.
Unless you know this person really well. And even if you do, I would say never guess especially with the people you know best. Um, especially by the way, never do this with partners. It's like just when you think you know what they
Yes.
want, what they like, and what they think, they'll have changed their mind because they're trying to do something else. So there's the transition thing. You have to help people release their
Yeah.
grip on what they've got now, and then the piece in between letting go of something and finding a new thing is called the neutral zone. It's a gap. It's a space
Mm.
where we don't know the answer yet, but we can spend time working it out. Now, the neutral zone is both really creative and really scary.
Mm.
You have to let go of how we've done things up until now.
Mm.
And people will try and jump to conclusions, and they do it all the time. Again, back to my AI example, just because I'm getting involved in so many conversations with leaders about AI. By the way, I'm not an AI specialist, but I really understand very well the psychology of how people respond to new things.
Yeah.
One
And
of
you're
the things that
advocating for, the other side of the equation.
I'm just advocating for everyone to step back and take a breath
Mm.
and kind of go, what people are doing at the moment. If you just look online, what's happening a lot at the moment is some people are going, it's awful, it's terrible, we should get rid of it, we problem. And other people are going, it's brilliant. We're gonna, it's gonna transform the universe. We're gonna change everything. And especially, replace those annoying, awkward people with it, and then life will be great. And in between, there is a space to actually get both of those groups together, plus a whole load of other people, and say, what are the business problems that we have at the moment? What are the business challenges that we're trying to resolve?
Mm.
Are we seeing those issues the same way? What do we think the problem is here? Where are we trying to get to?
Yes.
And uh, what are we trying to make possible?
Yeah.
And could AI help us do that?
Yes.
Very different question from the people who kind of turn up with AI and go, "It's shiny, it's really shiny. You should just buy it." It's like, woo, slow
Right.
down. Sorry, that's a long answer to your original
It is,
question.
but we're going back to again focusing on, why we're all here in the first place. We're all
Yeah,
here in the first place to make a success of whatever company that we're working for. So,
yeah,
what can help us? How can we work together? And whatever can help us is a good thing, and we'll help each other manage it together.
yeah.
Yeah.
And to some people that can sound kind of, happy clappy, let's all hug everyone and have a great time, but that isn't what it is at all.
No.
It's about saying we're all trying. I don't know anyone that deliberately turns up to work every day, boss or not, who kind of tips out of bed and says, "I'm going to do a really bad job today. I'm really going to mess things up." Right? Everyone comes to work trying to do the best they can in difficult circumstances, trying to be positive, trying to be upbeat, because no one wants, well, a few people on the fringes, right? But no one really wants to be that miserable every day. But some people have just kind of learned that after trying to change things, even things they can see are really obvious, um, they just get so many bruises on their forehead of being told to get back in their box or whatever, that people give up. And I see lots of people. Part of what's kind of driven me through this whole program, I think, career, I think, is that I've seen so many people give up, and it's just really sad. Kind of, the light goes out their eyes. People complain that, oh, Fred's not working the way he used to do. It's like, no, well, there's a kind of conversation there. Now, lots of people then resort to things like, Alan, could you come in and coach Fred for me to
Yeah.
make him better? No, what I
No.
will do is get the two of you together to kind of rebuild a relationship based around doing good work.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is too much stuff goes on inside organizations.
Yeah.
Back to this thing about habits and patterns, too much stuff in organization goes on because that's how we do this thing around here.
Mm.
And you aren't allowed to question it. But
Mm.
but the minute you start questioning it and going, hold on a minute, Emperor's new clothes and all of that, it's like, are we really going to do this new thing the way we've always done things?
Mm.
Don't we all know that they're, we don't know what to replace it with, but don't we know that this thing is not as useful as it once used to be?
Exactly.
And if you
Exactly.
can have that conversation, what I've found is if you can solve real things together and work together and get things done together,
Yeah.
all of the other stuff disappear. It doesn't disappear completely, but it's the quickest
Takes
way
a back seat.
to yeah, all the other stuff, the psychology and the teamwork and everything else comes with it because you're making a difference to things. Back to this thing about transitions, the gap, the neutral zone in the middle between how things used to be and how you want things to be comes when you practice and people can see themselves making an impact. If they can see themselves making an impact, then you'll be amazed at how quickly things change inside an
Yeah.
organization.
And that segues really well into the next point that we're going to talk about, which is a leader having that confidence to bring his team in and really be what we now call a leader in this day and age, playing the role of a leader versus actually being yourself. So doing your job, but actually bringing yourself to that job. Let's talk about that idea of playing the role. Many people in senior positions feel a pressure to act a certain way. And what's the cost of that?
Okay, good question. I know it's a good question because we talked about it before, but this thing, I kind of feel like I'm going back to the same themes over and over again, but I go back because they're true and they're
Yeah.
so pervasive in society, right? Back to this idea that there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things, and the people in charge know the right way to do things and all the rest of it. We get told all of those things so much during our careers that when we appear as a leader, we have probably as a leader, we have got really good at learning things that do work really well, but also got really good at kind of performing in the stage presence sense
Yeah.
of being able to say the right things to the right people in the right places. Right. Some people call it politics. I think it's way more than that. I think it's just kind of assumptions and expectations of how we're taught to show up. The problem with all of that is that a the more experience you get, the more varied your experience, the more scripts and lines you're having to try and remember to go, what on earth is the right thing to say in this situation?
Yeah.
And we then get stressed. And when we get stressed, one of the things about our bodies, brilliant as they are, is that when we get stressed, it actually narrows our ability to remember all the stuff we know. And it also narrows our ability to get creative. So just at the time when we need to be really good at accessing things and really good at exploring and finding new solutions, our physical emotional stress stops this thinking part of our brain being able to work so well. So there's a kind of practical part to this of just learning other ways to show up. I said it before, simple things like breathing, focusing, even asking a question is not just a really good way to pull someone else in. Asking a question is a good way to calm ourselves down because 9 times out of 10, if we ask a question, part of our brain starts to try and answer it. And that pulls the blood back to our brain again and away from, the muscles that were just about to run away or hit someone. And so there's the first piece is kind of learning just to ground and center yourself in those situations. The longer term thing, though, is that if we spend most of our lives and career performing to things either that other people have demanded from us or that we have demanded from ourselves, that we've kind of come up with our own constraints and limitations on how we want to behave and how we want to show up. I've just used the word, those things that are on the one hand useful also become constraints. They kind of narrow other possibilities. And that's why one of the reasons why you see so many people mid-career kind of find to the point where they're asking questions like, hold on a minute, why am I here again? What am I doing? What do I really care about? And those kinds of things. And the really bizarre thing is that if we've been kind of hiding part of ourselves or saying, oh, I'm not allowed to be like that at work. I'm not allowed to do those things at work because, you're not supposed to do it. So we kind of narrow down that we bring into work on the grounds it's supposed to be the best way to do things. The really crazy thing about that is that, again, 9 times out of 10, everyone else can tell.
Yeah.
Just like everyone, like when we watch politicians on the TV trying to be very earnest and serious about something, and you're sitting there either getting angry or you're laughing out loud. In business, we tend not to laugh out loud or get angry quite so much, but we do kind of just get depressed, going, okay, John's going to be doing this thing again where he's going to stand there and tell this story that we know he doesn't really believe either. And that bit's okay and that bit's okay. But this is just, draining listening to this. And what we do know is that if leaders are more able to turn up as themselves, not in the kind of narrow sense of themselves that they've learnt all these years, but a fuller, more open, more that kind of version of themselves, really
Yeah,
grounded and centered themselves, that gives other people permission to do the same thing. So,
exactly.
so we get energized by it. We we kind of see our leaders saying what they really think and what they really mean, rather than trying to hide it. So we feel that we can say what we really think and we really mean. Then the conversations might get a bit tense,
Yeah,
but if we're being honest about it and we're just focusing on fixing the problem, not on trying to be mean to each other, the crazy thing is that you actually get problems solved faster
yeah, and
and you build
yeah.
tighter relationships and performance goes up and momentum goes up and all the things you're trying to fix that are being stifled by the fact that everyone's holding back and kind of wondering what they're allowed to say finally start to open up.
Yeah. So there's a knock-on effect that actually benefits everybody because they see the leader not just performing, but actually being themselves and bringing themselves to the job. And that can really encourage others to do the same thing if they know that they have the safety to do that. And that's coming from the top.
Yeah, if anyone's ever applied for any kind of job where they've spent all their time worrying during the application process about how do I prove to people I fit the job,
Mm,
as opposed to would they recruit me into this situation? Because the other thing about job descriptions, whether it's the CEO or the a junior engineer these days, is that job descriptions are a uh, sorry everybody in this industry, but job descriptions are a vague snapshot in time. It's kind of in general, we want someone to be able to do these kinds of things and have this kind of impact. But what you're actually pressured to do every day changes every day because so much is changing fast. Over the past couple of years, we've had kind of economic shocks, wars, technology, AI, restructures, all kinds of other things going on. Those aren't covered in job description,
mm.
but that's the stuff that you have to deal with. And if you're constantly trying to ask the question of what am I supposed to be doing here? What's my script? What's the thing that's going to be safest for me to show up as? That wastes a load of energy that you could be more usefully spending just by kind of showing up and going, this is really messy. I don't know what the answer is here. What do we think, guys?
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really, yeah. So the three shifts that we've talked about, um, questioning assumptions, making
Yeah.
sense with others, and showing up as yourself. So in a nutshell, how can we explain to our listeners how we see them working together?
Yeah. Well, um, sorry.
Big
It's funny.
question again,
No, no,
sorry.
no, 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 no. No. I was just noticing. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time helping people do is noticing what's going on from them. And I'm a really good model for kind of noticing things and saying it out loud because you've got to be able to do something with it. And what I just noticed with that question, when you asked it, the voice in my head said, "Well, that's obvious, isn't it?" And then the
Exactly.
kind of, it is to me.
Yes,
It just isn't obvious
exactly.
for everyone else. But in terms of what this boils down to, this is going to sound ridiculously simple, and in the explanation, it is ridiculously simple. But I've always been, I've got a long background in engineering consulting and things where those industries love complicated solutions. They kind of build it bigger and more complicated. And you've only got to look at most pieces of software that you try and use to know the engineers have been behind that, and they love adding features, and they love to go, but you could do this with it. And I kind of go, I just want to do that with it. Oh no, that's boring. Don't want to anyway. So the world overcomplicates things, and particularly in big organizations are complicated places, right? To try and get anything done, as I said before, you depend on lots of people, and it doesn't matter how much you DM them or send them emails or get on Zoom calls. You're trying to get people to make sense of things in a way where we all kind of point in the right direction afterwards. And it kind of took me a while to work this out. I spent a long time in consulting trying to produce complicated solutions to what I thought were complicated problems until I worked out that in the middle of the most complicated problem you can have of an organization full of human beings, you need really simple solutions so that you can do small things that have a big impact, not try and control the thing. So having set that thing up, my answer better be good, right? So the three things. The first thing is start with yourself in every situation. Just like when you're on a plane and they do that thing that I still laugh at that says, in an emergency, put your own oxygen mask on first. But it's absolutely true that the thing you've got to get best at before you try and do all the other things that you're trying to do, the one thing that you need to get really, really good at is understanding who you are when you don't hold on to these things so tightly, and being able to breathe and kind of notice your distractions and the triggers and all that stuff, breathe and ground yourself in the middle of those really tough conversations. So that's a real skill and capability. Some people get bits of that already by, anyone who exercises regularly, yoga, meditation, running, cycling, all those things that get you into a physical state where you can actually let go and are more adaptable and able to get things done. That's great. The trouble is most people work like crazy in the office, get really stressed, and then kind of go and do the other thing to de-stress. I'm talking about what can you do in the moment when everything around you is trying to stress you and you want to take control. So the first thing is put your own oxygen mask on first. Second thing is whatever you're in the middle of, you don't have all the data on and you don't have all the answers to. So then you connect with other people. And that comes down to the questions again, right? Inviting them into a conversation, asking what they think. You don't have to do what they think. Chances are when you ask other people, you'll get 6 different opinions anyway. But what you're trying to do is make it, you're trying to help them ground and be able to say what they actually care about. And, actually, having said that, one of the really good questions to work with other people on is what actually matters most here. And questions like, what do you care about? What actually matters most? Have the ability to suddenly help people let go of a whole load of nonsense and just get down to what they actually care about. Now, there are times when I've done this with people in organizations and they get really uncomfortable with the question. As someone once said to me, I've been here 25 years. No one's ever asked me what I care about. Now, apart from that being really sad, it's kind of, okay, so we haven't been making the most of what you've got to contribute. So first thing, put your own oxygen mask on. Second thing is help people find theirs and do that invitation and questions rather than by telling them what they need to do. And then the third thing is between you, focus on then focus on the situation, the problem. And there are many more questions than this, but my favorite questions always start with the things I said before. In this situation, what's the problem we're trying to fix?
Yes.
Brackets, who says, how do we know? Right? If it's just a couple of people saying it, not enough. If we don't have evidence, if it's just opinion, not enough either. So what's the problem we're trying to fix? Who says, how do we know? Second thing is, where are we aiming for? If someone, so we might agree that there's a problem with, I was thinking about this in the shower this morning as an example, and it's come back. Okay, so someone might say, we've got a problem with sales. The problem's definitely sales. Okay, so what do we need to do then? And, most of the time, people jump to conclusions about, well, if the problem is sales, first of all, we need to kick sales harder. And, we need sales to be increased by 20%, random number. And the solution is sales have to work harder. Whereas everybody also knows that if you step back on sales are at the end of a long chain.
Yeah.
So have sales gone down because people don't have much money at the moment? There's a lot of that around. Or because the market's shifted in some way we haven't noticed, or because the competition have got some weird new offer or products that we weren't aware of, or because marketing have had a really bad month, or because the update to the products that development promise didn't land when we thought it would. There's all kinds of reasons why sales might be down, and people tend to jump to the simplest one that People tend to jump to the simplest solution that lets them blame someone else
Yeah.
rather than slowing down and going, hold on a minute, back to the assumptions thing. What's the problem we're trying to solve? What's a useful target to aim for in this context? So back to the sales thing. I've had leaders say, right, I want people to increase sales. Okay, great. By how much? Sorry? Well, 5%? Well, no, that isn't enough. All right, 20%. Yeah, that'd be great. 70%. Now you're being stupid. All of those things, which look like tangible measures, come with assumptions attached, right? 5% kind of feels like, let's just do what we already do, but do it a bit harder and faster. 20% feels like, we're going to have to do something. And guess what the two things are that leaders do most, because they're the simplest way to look like they've made a difference. Fire people to cut costs and restructure,
Mm.
both of which disrupt all the relationships and processes you've already got and probably don't actually fix the thing you were trying to impact. 70%, no one expects sales to increase 70%, but 70% might be a useful target, not as a realistic one, but just to get people to think, I hate the phrase, but really think outside the box to what would have to be true for us to increase our sales by 70%.
Exactly.
Oh, God, we then have to do. Okay, why don't we do bits of that and we might get 30%? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. So those questions and questions about the answer get you into the situation where you're ground yourself, ground other people, get people having honest conversations, and start with those three questions and see where it leads you. And it always leads you to be useful.
So basically, recapturing what you're saying, you're talking about putting on your own oxygen mask, taking a breath, having your own confidence to then go to your team and work out together what it is you want to work on together to have the outcome that will be best for the jobs that you're all trying to do together, i.e., to get a better result for the company. So, leaving behind all the things that have worked in the past, but now looking at the situation and all those factors that are contributing to that situation, and how can we as a team make it better?
Yes, and you just you
Lastly,
no. You just use the word in there, which I just want to highlight. You use the
yes,
word confidence, right? Confidence is something that kind of ties all those other things together.
yes,
Because I think as a leader, we kind of feel like we're supposed to be confident, and confidence often shows up as the I'm feeling comfortable, first of all, right? Even though I'm holding on tight to my scripts, I've got this is confidence in a kind of limited sense. I then feel confident and reinforce that by telling other people what I think and making them do it. And
yeah,
then I also feel confident because, well, we've done this before, it's past experience. What we're talking about is a completely different way of understanding confidence, which
yes,
is bad confidence is useful, but there's also the confidence of how do you tackle situations where you feel anxious and scared because you haven't done it before. You know, other people don't have all the answers either, but you know the circumstances mean that you've got to try and work out a different way of doing this thing that might start off not being comfortable.
mm,
Confidence is not the same as certainty.
mm,
Confidence in this sense is curiosity, questions, solving things together, and trialing things, testing things, and prototyping things until you work out what it's going to take.
yeah. So it's having a confidence in not knowing, and and finding a solution together.
Yeah,
And I think what you were saying before comes across in this concept as well, because if you can have the confidence in not knowing and face uncertainty, but with curiosity, again, that will translate to your team
yeah,
and give them the confidence to come forward or be brave enough to come forward with ideas, knowing that their ideas are actually really meaningful and could really be a great contribution rather than them sort of getting above their station, as it were.
yeah, and that's why understanding that is why the power of coaching and mentoring, why it works so well, because the coaching mentoring conversation provides a safe space for people to do that
Yeah.
and explore other possibilities and build the confidence. There's not a single recipe that kind of suddenly a button you can press that goes, now I'm confident in all kinds of uncertain situations. But this is about building it one step at a time, in small chunks.
Yeah. So if somebody listening today is feeling the strain of trying to lead the right way, what's one small shift that they could make to begin getting out of their own way?
Out of all the things I've said, I'm bound to go back to things I've already said, right? Because they're so key. If you just had to choose one, the one that I go back to what I said before, put your own oxygen mask on first. And the one question, there are two questions that help you do that. Find some space on your own and just find a real situation. This is kind of much easier to do if you've got a real problem, a real challenge, a real project to try and work with. And just ask yourself, what do I care about most in this situation? What actually matters most to me? Because if you can spend time answering that question, you kind of reconnect with yourself in a different way. And then you can start to go, okay, from that place, what do I do next? And just pick the next step. Don't try and fix everything, but you just reconnect with yourself in the things you care about most, rather than all this other nonsense that's going on. And then kind of use that to inform. So if I could take one small step to try and move in that direction, what would that be? And we can always find one, right? I don't know what the step will be for you, but I do know that if I ask you the question and ask you, so what's one thing you could do with the space, you'll come up with it, and you do that one. And then we run the conversation again, and then we do it. And after time, it's easier to do it on your own.
Alan Arnett, thank you very much.
Jill DeMasi, thank you as well.
That's all for today's episode of the MentorMeet podcast. A huge thank you to our guest Alan Arnett for sharing his insights, and to all of you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and do share it with anyone who might benefit from these discussions. You can also learn more about our coaches and mentors at mentormeet.com. Until next time, I'm Jill DeMasi. Thanks for listening, and keep striving for growth.